Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Amri Sofi from Malaysia, number one car sharing company, SOCAR Mobility Malaysia. Firstly, I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us here today for a very exciting panel where we will be addressing the question on whether Malaysia is ready to embrace the EV revolution and what would it take to accelerate the development of EV in Malaysia. To my fellow audience, throughout the discussion, should you have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A panel on your right. We will try to allocate some time at the end of this session to address your questions. I would also like to request that you include the name of the panelists you would like to address your questions to. So before I introduce to you our panelists, I would like to know from our audience, how many of you have actually driven an EV vehicle, whether it be a plug-in hybrid EV vehicle, whether it be a full EV vehicle, or whether it be an EV. So uh, I shall post up, a poll, and I would appreciate if you could provide your responses. Right. So now over to our panelists. Um, Firstly, we have Andrew Basham, who's joining us from Sydney, Australia. Right. Andrew is the managing director of Sime Motors, the automotive arm of Sime Berhad, involved in distribution, retail, and assembly. Prior to Sime Motors, he was the managing director of Lei Ching Hong's automobile arm in Hong Kong. Next, we have Hafifi Jalal. He is the electric vehicle lead of Malaysian multinational electricity company, Tenaga Nasional Berhad. He leads the development of the EV charging station network rollout across Malaysia. Next, we have Naim Husni Latif from MARii, Malaysian Automotive Robotics and IoT Institute. He's involved with the strategic development policy division of MARii, and he also oversees the NETC, the National Emission Test Center, a leading exhaust emission testing facility in Asia. Lastly, Dato Chuah, CEO and co-founder of Eclimo. They produce EV scooters in Malaysia, 100% Malaysian owned, with registered patents in storage, over 20 years of experience in lithium battery technology, and he is currently the chairman of EV Association of Malaysia. Right. So, gentlemen, welcome. Let's begin.
Thank you.
With several established automotive brands and automotive ecosystems in Malaysia, one would wonder, why isn't Malaysia leading the EV race in Southeast Asia? You have countries like Thailand, Indonesia, and even Singapore that are charging forward to become serious players in the EV industry. Yeah, it seems like Malaysia is getting left behind. Many countries have indicated strong commitment to end the sale of ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles. Norway, the most impressive by 2025, France and Singapore by 2040, recently Brunei 2035, China 2035, and Japan mid-2030s. So the question here is, why has Malaysia not shown a similar commitment? So are these merely bold statements, or are they actually achievable? Naim, check. I'm sorry, Naim, you're on mute. We can't hear you, Naim. Sorry about that, guys. A bit of a technical difficulty. Naim, while you're fixing that, maybe I could get Dato Dennis's view on this, or maybe Andrew. Andrew, would you like to chime in here? What are your views on this?
Yeah, number of questions there, Amri. I mean, are they bold statements? Yes, of course they're bold statements. Do they have backup for it? Yeah, they've got lots of smart people working on this, and so do Malaysia. I mean, everyone's looking into this. They'd be set a sum of money. What can they do? What can they achieve? It's possible to meet these bold statements, but it's also just setting direction. I mean, if some of them are 2035 and they get 80%, I mean, look, you know, when you're a kid at school, you know, it's possible to get 100 out of 100, but from what I remember, 80% is a good score. And I think if that's achieved, that's a fantastic outcome. And as I say, the bold statement's necessary to set the direction, which I think these markets are doing. And I wouldn't be too tough on Malaysia. When's the right time to announce on that? Singapore's small. They don't have such an assembly set up. Yes, they're thinking of bringing in assembly, but it's a little bit easier perhaps. It's not easy for anyone, mind you, but a little bit easier for them to navigate through. So, Malaysia will come. There's many countries that haven't made a statement as yet. So I think it's on a good way. I think they even made a statement about the number of charging stations by 2030, which is a credible target.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, with regards to charging stations, perhaps we could discuss that a bit further with Hafifi a bit later on. But since you're involved in the retail side of things, what's your take on the commercial viability of EV, perhaps right now, right? Are we able to turn a profit on EV? Is that one of the reasons why we're not so committed to EV just yet?
Yeah, of course, one of the challenges is that, and we as in retail, we're happy to sell EVs, Dato, and we do in a couple of brands, but they do tend to be considerably more expensive. So at this stage in the development phase of EVs, the public, people, if there's 30,000 ringgit difference between the price of a car, then there's not too many of us that would choose the more expensive one just because it's a challenge, and we know the range anxiety exists and the like. So, and let's also not forget that most of the OEMs are still producing internal combustion engines too. So there's not that much choice in EV. So it's very much at its infant stage. So, but look, I think retailers across Malaysia are absolutely delighted to be able to sell EVs when they are available.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You see, most OEMs, their engineering architecture is pretty much on ice at the moment. So, to switch over to EV, there's a lot of considerations there. But let's look at Japan, right? Japan, they were basically the pioneers when it comes to hybrid and EV vehicles. 1997, they introduced the Toyota Prius, the first of its kind, a hybrid. And then Nissan took it up a notch. 2010, they introduced the EV, full electric vehicle. Right, but now they are basically lagging behind the EV race. Why? Because they've invested so much in public hybrid EV, so they felt the natural progression was PHEV first before EV. Right? But I think what we can deduce from that, regardless of whether PHEV is the natural progression or whether we can go straight to EV, I think what we can say is an electric future is coming. The only question is when. Right. So Naim, I'd like to get your view on this question. We still can't hear you, Naim. Okay. That's all right. Maybe I can move on to the next question first, Naim. We've talked about commercial viability and, how about environmental focus, right? Because, a lot of countries are including EV as part of their net zero emission strategy. Let's look at Britain. They're committed to the sale of ICE vehicles by 2030, 5 years ahead of their original plan. Why? Because they feel this is in line with their sustainable goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2050. Dennis, to you, do you feel that, by focusing on economic impact, this will be a good start to really drive EV development in Malaysia?
First of all, I think based on your question, I believe that Malaysia is not left behind at this moment for electric vehicle. For instance, that when I do develop the electric two-wheelers, the two-wheelers is comparison to still like Vespa, Piaggio, which is at a certain category. And during that time, at this category, we call it as a L. We already have a policy and also the so-called a policy to implement L3 category, which is in year 2012. And 2012, we already have our policy in place, which is you can apply legally through JPJ. JPJ is a transport authority to put the two-wheelers street legal on the road. That was already established in 2012. So Malaysia is always supporting the industry. For instance, for me as an SME, whereby if let's say the policy is not in place, even though I develop the electric two-wheelers, I won't be able to put it street legal on the road, which you have a number plate, the tags. So Malaysia is, I would say that there's a lot of agencies, ministries are supporting the industry. So coming to
Dato Dennis, sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off a little bit there. We will have a session a bit later on support from government agencies and subsidies. Thank you for that. But touching on this, in terms of environmental benefits, let's look into environmental benefits. A lot of these countries are including EV as part of their strategy to reduce emissions overall. Do you think this will be a good start in Malaysia? Are we not focused enough on environmental impact?
In terms of environmental impact, this need to have more education, which is for people to be able to understand further. For instance, when I always market the electric two-wheelers, electric two-wheelers for the customer using our scooters. For instance, that if they run 100 kilometers a day by using our TMB grid supply, we're talking about saving 7 kilo of CO2. And saving 7 kilo of CO2 is just only one bike. If you talk about one whole year, they're actually saving from 2 to 2.5 tons a year. That's the CO2 savings. And 2 to 2.5 tons a year, that is equivalent to planting of 100 trees. So this is directly you're able, the moment that you implement the electric scooters or electric vehicles on the road, you are already talking about saving the CO2. That is good for our environment. But this need to have more educations to our society.
Okay, great. But let's talk about touching on environmental impact and social awareness as well. Some of the hi Naim, we can hear you now.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Let's look at electricity, right? The path towards full electrification of our vehicles. Let's consider the energy source, right? And I think the next question is to you, Hafifi. Malaysia is pretty much dependent on coal and gas to produce electricity, which are not exactly the case. Would this defeat the purpose of the overall objective of EV? Or is the fact that electric vehicles have zero emissions compared to ICE vehicles sufficient for now? And is this a start? Right.
Okay, thank you, Amri. I just would like to echo what Dato Dennis just mentioned earlier. At the present moment, we are currently operating on 60% of our energy source coming from coal power plant, about 35% from gas, 3% from hydro, and slightly less than 1% from solar. Even under these circumstances, we are about 35 to 38% cleaner than the internal combustion engine. So having said that, the government also has put in few policies that is support the growth of renewable energy. And only recently, like 2 weeks ago, they just released the result for the large scale solar power plant. So they're going to increase the percentage of energy coming from solar from about less than 1% to 2 to 3% by 2025. So this will probably improve the generation mix. So again, regarding the energy mix, we see that there is a potential improvement in terms of carbon emission. And this trajectory, I think we will reduce the carbon emission even more. Okay. At least for the next 10 years.
Right. Thank you for clarifying on that. Naim, we missed you earlier.
Sorry for that.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Touching on the first question, care to share your views?
All right. Okay. First of all, thank you for the question, and also sorry for disconnecting just early on. All right. In terms of the carbon emission, yes. If your question is that a bold statement from other countries, I would say I do agree with Andrew. Sometimes it's bold, but when you wanted to do the information given to the public, of course, the government need to consult with the industry. They need to consult with other ministries and agencies, and later on then they can do the information given to the public. So it's just not a bold statement. Of course, there's a study before that, but I also do agree with Andrew. They must have a really terms of like a bold statement in order to get your views and to focus. If there's nothing, then maybe there's no focus, and we might go some other ways, right?
To put things into action, right?
Yeah. Yes. Correct.
Okay. So very interesting views. Now I'd like to pose the question back to the audience, right? I'd like to know, which would you prioritize on when choosing to buy EV or ICE? Would you look at environmental impact or economic viability, right? So please provide your responses in the poll. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of our discussion. There's been a lot of concerns surrounding EV. Now we're looking from a consumer perspective, right? So there's been a lot of concerns that's been going around for a while now. But looking at how EV has progressed and how battery technology has progressed, perhaps these concerns may not be valid for much longer. Right. So I'm talking about, number one, the sticker price of vehicles, such as what Andrew highlighted earlier. EV vehicles right now are very expensive, right? And number two, we talk about range anxiety, right? The driving distance for each fully charged batteries, and also access to charging stations. But let's touch on the first point with regards to the prices of EV vehicles. Now, EV vehicles are expensive primarily because of the cost of batteries, right? But batteries, the technology has advanced tremendously over the past decade or so. If we look at 2009, now this may sound a bit complex, but maybe Dato Dennis can provide a bit more explanation on this. In 2009, the average price per battery pack was about 1,183 USD per kilowatt hour. Where it stands today is 137 USD per kilowatt hour. Now, to put things into perspective, for an EV vehicle to be on par with an ICE vehicle in terms of price, the average price per battery pack will need to be brought down to about 100 USD per kilowatt hour, right? Now, so basically the prices of batteries are reducing very drastically. So Dato Dennis, do you think the tipping point is coming anytime soon, right?
Definitely batteries have a lot of countries, especially on site, they are putting a lot of funding into area of development. For instance, when you talk about 2009, 2001 per kilowatt hour, when I started lithium battery in 2006, I'm actually selling it for like 2005, a complete battery pack, 2005 per kilowatt hour. And the involvement until today, we are talking about a complete pack, depending on the product. You are looking at 300 to 250 per kilowatt hour. So the improvement is definitely coming very soon, whereby it will be able to come to the parity of the combustion engine very, very soon, because of the energy density of this research has increased and price have dropped. So this will definitely come in the very near future.
Deloitte came out with a report quite recently, and they said that the tipping point could come as soon as 2022. What is your view on that? Is that possible?
Oh yes, it's definitely possible, because there are already, not only previously when you look at 2000 in 2000, before 2010 and later, there's only Japan and Korea is doing research on lithium batteries. But today, you are looking at Europeans, Americans, Taiwan. The competitions are getting greater, and everyone is trying to be in the front runner. So the very near future, you're talking about 1 to 2 years time that you're able to directly comparing to combustion engine.
Okay. So, I mean, 2022 is a year away. By then, what we can say is we can expect for EV vehicles, the prices of EV vehicles to be on par with ICE vehicles very, very soon. Right? Now, let's talk about range anxiety. Recently, there was a report on a partnership between Tesla and Panasonic where they found breakthroughs in terms of battery development. Right? And they claim by 2024, they'll be able to produce a battery that where on a full charge will give you a driving range of 804 kilometers to 965 kilometers. Now, to put things in perspective, the distance between Johor Bahru all the way to Georgetown, Penang is about 690 kilometers. So what this means is using that battery on a full charge, it can take you all the way to Penang and also make some of the trip back, right? So, oh, we've lost him there. What's connection? Okay, so talking about batteries. So, hi, Dato. Back. Oh.
Sorry, just now we lost for a while, but coming to this, when we measure about battery technology, we talk about watt-hour per kilo. Previously, when we look into the a complete pack, we are talking about 100 watt-hour per kilo, and there is already a promising that we can able to reach 1,000 watt-hour per kilo. This means that you can able to have a range of ideally for electric two-wheelers to go for maybe about 200 to 300 kilometers per charge. You talk about four-wheelers, it can give you 800 to 1,000 kilometers per charge. So watt-hour per kilo have already tremendously increased, and the price is dropping tremendously as well within this couple of years. So and furthermore, when you increase the watt-hour per kilo in terms of the battery and energy density, and yet you are not losing the cycle life of electric vehicle. What they worry is not only the anxiety of the range, and also what happens if 5 years, 8 years down the road, how much I need to replace my battery. And I can say that the watt-hour per kilo energy density increase, the cycle life can increase even tremendous. Previously, we talk about 500 cycle. Now we can reach from 2,000 to 8,000 cycles, about 2,000 to 2,005 cycles, and it's keep on increasing, and the price is dropping. So definitely very promising that electric vehicle is going to stay where because of the battery technology have improved, and the motor as well have improved tremendously. The motor, because you don't want to have a battery improvement and the motor by using a high voltage to run it. Motor improve, you only require low watt-hour per kilometer. The motor will also improve tremendously as of right now. So this combination have shown that the technology were able to stay to replace the combustion.
Okay, that's very impressive. So what we're saying here is very soon we will see tremendous reduction in prices, but a tremendous increase in energy density, right? So touching on range anxiety, now moving back to you, Hafifi, right? Now, all right. But sorry, before I move on back to Hafifi, I'd like to ask you, Dr. Dennis, just your opinion. Tesla is looking to achieve this, produce this battery by 2024. Do you think it is possible, and will it be affordable?
When you talk about battery right now, I believe that now is already considered affordable, but at which category, at which car is already at affordable. And furthermore, a lot of times that when you have a user using it, the car, then only they experience that, wow, not only affordable, but the maintenance have actually improved compared to combustion. Combustion, you have a pre-schedule like 10,000 kilometers, you need to service it. But for electric car, you don't need to, because you have less parts, moving parts on the electric vehicle. So only on able to bring down the cost of the whole total vehicle, but maintenance is the most key important, because you don't actually count down time. When you deliver your car for servicing, probably you make an appointment and 1 year you send for 4 times or 2 times of service. But electric car, not necessary to have a pre-schedule of service. So this also indirectly you save a lot of time and also cost on maintaining the vehicle.
Okay, thank you. So going to Hafifi, with the rapid advancement in battery technology, right, which could alleviate range anxiety further, will there be less need for the availability of public EV stations? What are your thoughts on this?
My view on this matter, I always view that the main charging would happen at home. That is my fundamental view on EV charging. Public charging is there to address range anxiety.
Yeah.
So having said that, it would be crucial not to focus too much on the quantity of the charges, but the quality of the sites. Like for example, the Malaysian EV Owners Club, they came up with a map that connecting north to south, east to west, and it takes about 1,966 kilometers just to connect all these points.
Okay.
So if a car can travel about 300, let's say if we take 200 kilometers, just to be safe, we only need 10 points where we can plan up DC fast charges so that people can travel from Johor to KL, KL to Penang, and Penang cross over to KB, down to Kuantan, and all the way back to Johor. So before this, I had the opinion that probably we need to populate a lot of charges so that a lot of people can use. But then again, I don't think so now, because I think that the best way that we do this is to actually place the charger where it will be mostly used, and then we're good to go. On top of that, I believe that we need to separate between urban commuting and intercity traveling.
Yeah.
So when we do that, we basically identify what kind of charges that we're going to use for each of these each particular category. Like for example, for urban commuting, if you want to plan up charges in a city, you don't need DC fast charges. You need at most 11 or 22 kilowatt ACs. But if you're traveling from JB to KL, then you probably need DC charges.
Yes.
Right. So that is how we are going to plan the network growth. Should we see any signals coming from the OEMs that they're going to bring in the cars, this is how we're going to approach this EV charging issue.
Okay, that's very interesting. I think one of the key issues with regards to charging is basically the downtime. Right? If you look at China, one of the businesses, the spin-off business from EV that started in China is basically battery swapping, right? Yeah. So instead of charging your batteries, they drive into these workshops, they swap the batteries. After a few minutes, it's done, and then they drive off. Do you think this is something that could work in Malaysia? They've tried it in the States, didn't quite work, introduced by Tesla, but it works in China. Do you think it could work in Malaysia?
Is this for me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of battery swapping.
Okay.
All right. Because I think, to me, battery swapping is the left wing of EV revolution. The mainstream would be the typical plug-in charging, and battery swapping will be a teaser. If you if you can call it that.
Okay.
So I would focus more on the conventional plug-in charging, because I think that battery swapping it requires fundamental approach.
Yeah.
Because you need to figure out how the car works, if the car can be compatible for the battery swapping. Having said that, that might influenced by the numbers of cars which are probably using battery swapping.
Yeah.
For scaling up purposes.
I guess in China, this has worked for them because, if I'm not mistaken, they account for about 50% of the China alone, 50% of the global sale of EV vehicles. Perhaps it works over there. But let's talk a little bit about the EV charging stations, right? Of course, it cannot be denied. We need to develop the infra further. Will TMB be working with other companies to really supercharge the rollout of charging stations?
We are focusing more on fleet at the moment.
Okay.
To be honest, we have already installed 73 chargers. We collaborated with MGTC under their brand Charge EV, and we planned up about 73 chargers, 22 kilowatts, most of them. We did that part, but the utilization rate is still low. Despite the fact whatever is happening right now in Malaysia, but the utilization rate is still low. So we are going to approach from a different perspective now, is by working with the potential e-fleet operators. So, right.
Can I add? Sorry. Yeah,
Yes.
I really agree with Hafifi. Malaysian tends to charge their EV vehicles right at home because it's really convenient. So that is one of the possible reasons why the public EV charges is so low on the usage. They love if they can charge nearby their home. Normally in condominiums or apartments or service condominiums, they have EV chargers. So I think conveniently they like to charge nearby to their homes rather than go charging outside. So
yeah,
that is,
especially overnight, right?
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I think.
Now, without a doubt, for us to scale the EV industry, again going back to Hafifi, I think because electricity is quite a big topic as well, in addition to batteries. The demand for EV related electricity, according to one Bloomberg report, will increase by 300-fold, right, by 2040, if not mistaken. So, looking at this, are we going to be grid ready to meet the demand of this?
Okay. Just for your information, we haven't seen 300-fold yet in Malaysia.
Yeah.
So probably that's why all of us is taking it easy.
Yep.
But you need to realize one thing, that the electricity supply industry is a regulated market.
Yeah.
So we do not want to overplan, because if we overplan, everything will be passed through to the customers. We do not want to do that. Let me just put things into perspective again. At the current moment, we have about 33% surplus of energy generation, reserve margin, if we call it. So and it is improved further throughout the day, which means if you're charging during the night, probably the margin will get even bigger, because that is when the demand will drop. And if you charge your car way beyond 12 o'clock at night, then the demand will go even lower. So in terms of generation, we don't see any problem. But the issue will come at the distribution network. So that is where the bottleneck will be at. Like for example, any development does not cater for EV charging. I can safely say so. So if everyone in that particular housing area decided to use EV, then that area will have a lot of problems.
Okay.
We might even see blackouts. So that's why boils down back to the projection or to the target. That's why some of these countries that you mentioned earlier, they have some bold statement that as what you say, because we need to put up a good target, a realistic target that we can work towards.
Yeah.
A lot of things needs to be done, especially on the grid side, but without any clear or approved target, this can't be pushed through. Like for example, if you say that there will be 30% of cars sold next year will be EV. But if no one agrees to that and there is no sign from the OEM that the cars are coming, we will not be able to plan up, we will not be able to improve the system. Because we wouldn't want to be putting in extra investment unnecessarily and pass it through the customers.
I agree with you. I agree with your point there. I guess it's a chicken and egg thing. Which one comes first, the demand for EVs, infrastructure, or they work in tandem, right?
Right. Chicken and egg, but we know that everyone is eating chicken now, so the chicken is coming.
Chicken is coming. Yeah.
I can add on to this. This is whereby if you look at a very simple understanding, when there's a demand, the supplier will definitely able to put up whatever demands out there. And for instance, 5 years ago, Philippine government implement e-trike. It's a trivial for their buses. So it's like a tutut. And when they implement, they actually subsidizing 3,000 units of e-trikes to actually round the community to take passenger to the main bus stops. And implemented 3,000 electric e-trikes. Philippines have, I would say, comparing Malaysia, the grid, and Philippines is still, Malaysia is still better in terms of grid infrastructure. But when they implement it, the industries, the people who use it, consumer, they are worried on the electricity supply. But as I say, when there's a demand, the electricity companies will definitely cater to it. So the 3,000 implemented, there's no issue at all. So I don't see there's any issues on the on Malaysia to implement EV, especially the infrastructure on charging, where TNB they are in these industries and they are very, very strong into this distribution of grid work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I mean, let me do a quick recap on what we discussed so far with regards to the concerns, right? We talked about the cost of vehicles, primarily contributed by EV batteries, the cost of EV batteries. The tipping point is coming very soon. Range anxiety may not be an issue for much longer. When it comes to charging infra, we do have a plan in place, but we have to be practical, right? We don't want to overplan. I think that's what, to echo what Hafifi said. Now let's look at the last part. I know you spoke a little bit about this before, earlier on, Dato Dennis, on the after sales, right? You see, EV vehicles, the technology is greatly advancing. One could even say EV vehicles are more technology than vehicle, right? So is our after sales sector ready for this? Well, what are your thoughts on this, Dennis?
If you look back on our government supporting our industry, especially the automotive, our automotive, when we don't talk about the electric vehicle, we talk about the combustion vehicle as what we have right now. The agencies, our ministry, especially MARii, they are actually supporting. They have the academic where to train mechanics to service the combustion vehicle. All are very much in place to build this industry, and our agencies, MARii, even have our EEV, energy efficient vehicle. Energy efficient vehicles is not only for EV or hybrid, but it goes to the combustion vehicle. And the combustion vehicles, as long as you don't exceed the emission, you are categorized under EEV, which you are enjoying a very good tax savings for consumer to purchase the vehicle. So when any industry they want to implement it to the consumer, there is a very strong studies among all the agencies before the implementation. So this is for the automotive. I very strongly believe that when you want to implement electric vehicle, the agency itself putting a team to study this, and the moment NAP or any agencies that implement electric vehicles, I believe that we are going to be the strongest policy in place. That's what I believe. Even though today you don't see any policy in place yet, but we are not left behind. We will be able to have a strong policy when we implement our electric vehicle.
Right, and to add on that, some say that we're, looking at the EV race, we're still at the beginning of the race. So there's still, many more to come, right? So going back to you, Andrew. I mean, you're from the automotive side of things. What do you think is required to get our existing workshops ready to anticipate EV?
I think that with Dennis there, I think that there is a certain amount of training, but let's not forget the technicians we have, mechanics, technicians, however you like to call the ladies and gentlemen we have working with us across Malaysia. People are trained. A lot of them had 4 years specific training as apprentices. They have continued to have on-the-job training. We just need to. The OEMs are pretty strong in that. In terms of the schools, apprenticeship training schools, this is what we need, because they will move over. I mean, still brakes, tyre changing, etc. They're doing that already. So there will be some similarities. So it's not 100 to 0 or 0 to 100. And I think we just need to be working on training them up on how to replace modules within the battery structure, because it may not be, you need to take the whole lot out, repairs, etc. Some of this is a bit dangerous at the moment, and we need to skill up the people with that. But I think, Amri, we do have to remember is that even if we went to 100% of EV sales next year, there are still all these combustion engines running around, and we need people to look after the combustion engines that are out there, because that would be really inefficient to rid of them overnight. So we need, it's going to be a gradual change for technicians. So I'm, knowing the very capable technicians we have and that other retailers have no problem with that side of things.
Okay, so basically, looking at our after sales readiness, taking Dato Dennis's point of view and yours as well, the transition over may not be entirely complex. I think it's a lot easier than most people need to be, right? Especially EV vehicles having so much more less moving parts compared to ICE vehicles, right? So now I'd like to create another poll, and I'd like to pose this question to our audience. Please share with us on what are your top 2 concerns when it comes to EV. So let's move on to the next topic with regards to incentives. Do we have enough incentives to attract investors and grow our EV sector in Malaysia, right? So first, let's look at even though the tipping point is coming soon, the reality right now is EV vehicles are still more expensive. Do you think subsidies for consumers would work, similar to what they have done in China, where they provide rebate to customers for purchasing EV vehicles? The amount they pay out is pretty much dependent on the driving range of each fully charged vehicle. Do you think that will work in Malaysia, Andrew?
Sorry, could you it dropped out there for a second. Could you just repeat that, Amri?
Sure. Do you think subsidies for consumer subsidies for the purchase of EV vehicles would work in Malaysia, similar to what they have done in China? And really, is this sustainable? Right?
The second part, sustainable. I mean, that's I think we have to go to the authorities there, and this is the vexed question. There will have to be some subsidies as we move across, but you can't. We all have to do our part. The authorities, the public, the OEMs, the dealers, we've all got to take some responsibility in this, and I don't think it should just be driven purely by subsidies. I don't think that's fair on anyone, because let's face it, we all then as taxpayers end up paying for that anyway. I actually think education is more important. Now, subsidies on certain aspects at the moment. So again, you have to look at those subsidies to see whether they're in the right place at the moment. But again, let's not forget car assembly, car manufacturers often, Dennis's is probably a little bit quicker cycle, a bit more skilled in the two-wheelers, but 7-year cycles. And if you suddenly change a subsidy setup overnight, what that does, some people might be in the second year of their 7-year cycle and they're suddenly greatly disadvantaged. They may decide to pull out. Hopefully they won't, but that could be the extreme, or not invest as much. So the authorities always have that challenge at the moment. How do they administer subsidies without disadvantaging a group too much, but giving some benefit to the public as well? So look, I think that they'll need some subsidies, but goodness me, there are much smarter people out there that will be able to tell you what sort of split that will be at the current stage, because we don't start with a sheet of paper, of course.
Of course. You're absolutely right, Andrew. I mean, if you look at China at the moment, they're looking to reduce the subsidies, right?
And they are.
They are. Yeah. They're reducing the subsidies, but they introduce the subsidies just to catalyze the EV industry, right? But I guess to ensure sustainability of EV, we should be focusing on the market and also technology, right? With more advancements in terms of technology, then you will reduce the overall cost of EVs, right? So let's move on to the next topic. Let's look at the NAP. Right. I mean, there's been news articles that have been going around with regards to MAP 2020, and of course, touching on Dato Madani's speech this morning, he does acknowledge there needs to be some enhancements in terms of the EV chapter of NAP 2020. So I'd like to get your view, Naim, on what are some of the incentives that we could look into or currently implemented in other countries that could work in Malaysia. Just your view.
All right. Okay. Of course, like Dato Dennis mentioned before, in terms of getting people to aware about electric vehicles, the EP to 2020, there is one of the programs which is energy efficient vehicle. So it's not just about from hundreds of emission of carbon dioxide, and then we change to zero carbon dioxide for electricals. So there's a deduction of NEP 2020 by using energy efficient vehicle, which means OEMs and distributors, they need to make sure that their vehicles is complying with reducing carbon emission, so that their research and development, their trainings for their staff, they know that the vehicles is actually reducing in terms of carbon emission. That is the first step. We have to deduce. And that is one of the reasons I said that it's not that we are not aware. The government is aware about that. So that's why we give, first of all, is the incentivizing by reducing carbon emission. And second, that one is in terms of incentive. The second one would be in terms of training and also the awareness of most of the public. And to get the awareness of the public, we need to get them know what is NEP 2020, what is energy efficient vehicle. And one of the action that we do in energy efficient vehicle, after this, there would be one standards coming out for energy efficient vehicle, whereby whenever the manufacturers test their vehicles according to that particular standards, they will get some incentive. And that particular vehicle get the sticker so that everyone will know this this vehicle is actually energy efficient vehicle. And of course, electric vehicle will definitely get the EV status. So by Amri saying that what are the things that Dato has mentioned this morning, yes, there might be discussions between the governments and also the industries later on, especially for EV, but it's still in early stages. But I can say that we have to know that in NEP 2020, we try to reduce the carbon emission in order for us to go to PHEV and in the end, maybe electric vehicles.
Right. How about in terms of incentives for customers? When we're not talking about these, let's look at Norway. Norway, which is basically the poster child of EV, right? They have implemented, some form of incentives not really cash incentives, but incentives to reduce the total cost of ownership of EV vehicles. For instance, free tolls, right? They don't have, people who own EVs don't have to pay for tolls, right? Or even designated free parking.
Yeah.
Do you think that's something that could work in Malaysia, or is this something that the enhanced AP would address?
I think we need to study this in depth, of course, in terms of the awareness, in terms of getting people to buy EV. We need to check what kind of things that they would like to get when they have an electric vehicles.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we will address in discussion with the OEM distributors and also all others ministries and agencies. And as you were mentioning, in terms of China, they even try to track back the incentive after the people already bought those EV in order to elevate the sales. So I think it might be a good example as well.
Yeah. Okay. So Dato' Dennis, over to you. I mean, from a manufacturer standpoint, you have received, financial assistance from the government, especially in the areas of R&D. So has this helped you, or is there anything more that can be done?
I would say that the industry, especially for Eclimo, we have quite a very good support, especially on the grant. The grant which is able for Eclimo to continue to do our research development, especially on the battery and the motor. So the industry or the MITI or MIDA already have in place to support the industry, which is right now, electric vehicle. So on top of that, I still believe that the NAP play a very important role in providing either incentive or subsidy. For instance, I am doing electric two-wheelers. And electric two-wheelers, every year without miss, we have about 400,000 new sales. And if you talk to 450,000 people, when they want to buy a vehicle, have they ever considered of getting an electric two-wheelers? No. So far, there is no so-called talks of people who want to buy two-wheelers. They will consider to search for electric. Why? Because the industry is already there, whereby how much is our petrol? It's 2 ringgit per liter. And they won't be able to think of, I was trying to search for buying electric. If the electric doesn't suit me, then I buy a combustion. So if there is a policy in place, then the consumer who actually wanted to buy two-wheelers, they will definitely do a comparison. A policy for electric is so much better, or a policy for a combustion which is 2 ringgit per liter is better. So the policy play a very important role for a consumer to consider whether I want an electric vehicle or not. Whether I can charge or have range anxiety and all that, but policy in place is giving people to have a mindset of, I will want to consider this first before I consider combustion. So this is one. By industry, until today, we already, as I say, we already have so-called support in place, whereby you can actually get support in terms of grant, in terms of machinery like IR 4.0. You can actually improve your assembly line. Instead of, let's say, I do 3 units a day, can I improve the assembly line to 10 units a day? Well, the industry do have, the MITI do have these plans. You can actually work with MARii or can work with MIDA, where to improve your assembly line. This is already in place. Any of the industry, please look into this. And this is a critical area whereby our industries are very much exploitated. We don't have language barrier. We're actually able to position ourselves not only to develop the technology for Malaysia, but we can actually export to overseas. We also have an industry where we're joining supplying materials to a tier 1 electric vehicle company in the world. So the industries are pretty well competitive in this sector.
Okay, thank you for that. Gentlemen, we have 8 minutes left. Now I'd like to move on to the next topic. Let's talk about social acceptance of EV, right? Looking at the polls, the response from our audience, most of them are concerned with regards to the price of vehicles, right, when it comes to EV. Now going back to you, Dato Dennis, your EV scooters are still a lot more expensive than ICE scooters, right? So how have you managed to convince your customers to use your vehicles, and what have you done to convince them to take your vehicles?
When we talk about electric two-wheelers, and yes, the initial investment is high, because if you buy a combustion two-wheelers, you doesn't count petrol in 5 years' time, how much I will spend on petrol and how much I spend on the vehicle. You're actually doing a comparison whereby that is the vehicle without petrol. And if you are buying an electric vehicle, the battery is already in place. So if you into consideration of the petrol that you're going to pump in 2 years' time, plus the bike, the price will be very, very competitive. Today, electric vehicle, if you include that, my ROI is whoever use electric vehicle, your ROI, and yet our petrol price is that cheap, 2 ringgit per liter. We are talking about 2 years plus ROI to get an electric scooter. So what I do is that whether people confidence of the cost is really affordable, and what I do is I implemented a leasing or rental program. You just rent it 600 ringgit a month, and they see that why I'm still in the market as already 6 years, because in the long run it's still cheaper to run an electric vehicle, electric scooter, than a combustion. So this already give a confidence of people who want to use. So now my job is to be able to get whoever interested to use two-wheelers to change their mindset to go for electric, whereby the ROI is less than 2 years right now. Because of after 6 years, we have a lot of experience that the bike running on the road. Initially, when we designed the vehicle, we have a lot of, we worried, okay, battery, we put in a lot of materials just to safeguard ourselves that the battery doesn't catch fire, the scooter need to run 100 km per hour. But throughout the years, the bike already running on the road for 6 years, we have improved tremendously, whereby we can still run 100 km per hour, but now our charging time from 4 hours to 1 hour. Our range 100 km per charge. Now we can do 120 km per charge. So definitely this will give benefits to the user, whereby the ROI will be shorter and shorter coming. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Now let's look at Singapore, right? Via Blue SG, a car sharing company in Singapore, where they're bringing out a lot of charging stations and also electric vehicles. Do you think that the involvement of a car sharing company would help to really increase the social awareness and acceptance of EV vehicles, because people no longer have to purchase the vehicles, they can try out the vehicles, and then perhaps this could spur demand for the use of EV and potentially even the need for charging stations. Hafifi, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it will be a good approach, because again, but to increase the awareness of driving an EV, yeah, we do need this. EV car sharing will be the first step before we can do any scaling up. And I always had this idea of mobility as a service. Yeah, where you, with what you guys are doing with SOCAR car sharing, where you try to move from car ownership to mobility service. I think that will be a great start for EV to spur in Malaysia.
Okay, I think that's pretty much in line with what Dato Dennis is doing with Eclimo at the moment. People don't have to own the vehicles; they lease it, right?
Right.
So, gentlemen, we're almost out of time. Any parting words from our panelists?
Of course, for me, the fleets that I'm putting to the market, I still hope that we can actually able to increase our charging point. Even though I'm providing 100 kilometers per charge, the user who using it for food deliveries or parcel deliveries, they are looking into 150 to 170 kilometer range. So when there is more points, they are given more confidence to actually use the vehicle or the two-wheelers. So hoping all the agencies can work together, especially the mall will allow to actually put the charging point where this will be a very good start. I'm talking about incentives, a very good start for charging point. Charging point doesn't cost a lot, but just the initiative to help putting up this industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today, and to our fellow audience, thank you once again for taking the time to join this very exciting panel discussion. Once again, thank you to all our panelists here today. To all of you, that is all for now. Have a great day.